Avengers. I'm your host, Thomas Rogers, and joining me this evening is Paul Thor Burns.
Hey, yo apes.
Also on the panel tonight, we have Danny Iron Man Kilpatrick.
Yep. Just here to talk some Marvel and get my tube fidgeted with.
And then finally, all the way over there on the East Coast, we have Alexander Hulk Hernandez.
What's going on, everybody?
So just a quick introduction of what we're doing here. This is Preparation Avengers. It is our weekly talk show leading up to Avengers Infinity War. So for the next, I think it's 18 weeks, we're going to be doing a weekly show where we talk about the events of each different Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. And this week we're starting with Iron Man. Before we get into the details, I want to say that this episode and the movie were brought to you by Burger King, Verizon, LG, Audi. Is it Audi or Audi? How do you guys
I think
say
it's
it?
I'm pretty sure it's Audi. Yeah.
Audi, Dell Computers, and Vanity Fair, Rolling Stone, and Wired Magazine. Brought to you by all of those. Not actually brought to you by any of them, but there was a lot of product placement in this movie.
Explain the joke.
What?
Don't explain the joke.
Saying
So
a lot of
let
product
me ask you a question before we get started.
Yeah,
You said this is going to be an 18 episode series.
Yeah.
Understood. Is this to celebrate or just discuss? Because I understand like the concept is different.
If more specifically what we're asking is, are you going to have the ability to shit on these movies? Yes.
Okay. And no, like I
of course we're going to.
In general, I
them,
like these movies,
but there is a review portion to this.
Okay, sure.
And then my plan is, as of right now, we're going to do a final episode after watching Infinity War. We're going to do an Infinity War one, and then after that, we're going to do an additional episode where we rank them all.
Nice. Sure.
Make sense?
It does. Yeah, because when you said 18 movies, I was like, my God, that sounds miserable. Having to watch 18 of these. Like, these are fun, but like, I've got fatigue already.
Yeah.
So like, this one was the like, and I don't think I've watched this one since it came in theaters, so it was almost brand new again. But yeah,
I had the exact opposite
this movie
experience.
was a breath of fresh air, that's for sure.
Me too. And not only that, I had a hard time not starting Incredible Hulk just as soon as this ended.
No, I mean, like I said, that when you say the opposite experience, I think you mean the same experience. Like, this was good. Like, this is the one I hadn't seen in the longest time, so it was almost
you're
brand
saying
new
it'll
again.
get harder as you go along.
Yeah, yes.
No, I agree with that.
Once we reach, like, Captain America, Winter Soldier, like, it's going to be a slog for me. Like,
luckily, that's my favorite MCU movie, so once we hit that one, whew,
I don't
that's
like
when
that
I'm going to be
movie.
the most excited.
But,
Well, after seeing this, I'm not sure anymore because I enjoyed this a whole lot more than I expected.
All right. Before we get into everything, the show is going to be broken up into different segments. I also want to explain, we are broadcasting this live on Twitch, but for the sake of a polished podcast, we're actually not going to be interacting with the chat. At the end of the show, we may pop in and read some comments here and there of what people had to say. But this having it on Twitch is an opportunity for people to listen to it early. Otherwise, you can just watch it on YouTube the following day. So, first segment is, I want to talk about the facts of the movie. Just some Wikipedia internet sleuthing. To start with, this movie was released in theaters in the United States of America on May 2nd, 2008. Next up, it was directed by Jon Favreau. Favreau
beans?
It was...
I had a question about that.
I'm sorry?
So that name is so familiar. Is he one of the actors in this movie?
He is. He's actually, I would say he's, if you look at his IMDb page, it is primarily acting.
That's what I thought. And he's the guy who drives the car,
yeah,
right?
he's like his
chauffeur,
butler.
driver.
I wouldn't necessarily call him his butler, but
Yeah.
But yeah, he's the guy who rides along with him. So he follows him. There's that scene where he's like, I thought I lost you. He's that guy. This movie was distributed by Paramount Pictures, which is interesting because in 2009, Disney acquired Marvel. So all of this became Disney properties, but it's weird to think that at this particular point,
this was like
still
a
Paramount
year.
Pictures.
When did this come out? You said 2008?
2008.
Yeah, this is just a year. So Disney acquired Marvel that long ago?
Yeah.
God, it
Weird, right?
seems like it's only like 4 years ago that happened.
For sure.
Well, I think
Right, but we have to remember, these movies were in development years before the Marvel merger.
That's very true, and they also got a lot of momentum, right? They sort of started slow and built on it. So, Disney coming in, it took them a while to really catch their stride.
Well, that's a. I hope we're not like breaking the format.
No, this is exactly what I want the format to be.
But when you're saying like coming in slow, I was expecting it to be slower actually. Like I was real surprised at the end. I know that like Nick Fury comes in at the very end, but like they're setting up the Avengers bit right super early.
Yeah.
I was genuinely surprised by that as well.
That he talked about like I knew that he'd make an appearance like and be like, oh, we've got to talk about whatever the fuck it is. But I didn't think he was gonna name drop the Avengers initiative. I don't remember that happening in the first film that we got.
We actually are at the very end of the podcast. We're going to be talking about the post-credit scene. Every one of these podcasts will end in a discussion specifically around the post-credit scene. So I don't want to get too deep into it, but yeah, sure. I know exactly what you mean. It's really interesting, the idea that they built everything from this.
Not only that, it was just such a gamble, too.
Oh, so true.
Yeah, it definitely was.
Yeah,
especially with a franchise like Iron Man. If you think who Iron Man was, so I like comic books, but I've never been an Iron Man fan. The only things I really knew about Iron Man was like his alcoholism. I knew that there was a cartoon in the 90s. I didn't watch it. I watched the Fantastic Four one though, but
I didn't like Iron Man. Like when I came into this movie, seeing it the first time, Iron Man was like one of my least favorite of the Marvel characters, and I was like, well, I know who he is. He's got a pretty cool outfit, but man, I just do not care about him. After this movie, he is without a doubt one of my favorite Marvel characters. So
yeah, it was more of an
X-Men. That just shows you the power of the movies.
True,
because. Yeah. Originally, when Iron Man was out, he was just always like a B-rated Batman. He was just a B hero. This movie catapulted into A status.
That's on my notes.
No,
I want to talk about Batman later.
I disagree. I don't think this movie did that. I think Robert Downey Jr. did that. This movie, I think, would have been nowhere near.
No, I'm talking about the character Iron Man.
Yeah, I know. I'm just kind of making a joke, but like,
no, Robert Downey
90% of the success of this movie you can probably attribute to Robert Downey Jr.
Which is kind of crazy, because this is a good time, because I don't have anything about the actors. I don't have any segments or anything about the actors. So I think the facts portion is a good time to talk about this. Robert Downey Jr. before this,
I got some interesting stuff on that.
Yeah, he was nothing. He was a recovering. He was like, oh, he's a druggie. Don't cast him in your movie.
Yeah, he was kind of.
If you ever watch Basketball, remember that shit?
I have seen Basketball.
When they're operating on the little drunk kid. They're like, oh my god, he smells like Robert Downey Jr.
Exactly.
They're like, he was like a hack joke, before this movie.
For sure, and now
that joke has aged like milk.
It's a pleasure to have him in your film. The other two facts that I want to mention are that the movie had a budget of $150 million.
Which is huge for how old it was.
I'm sorry, $140 million. For sure. It's a surprising budget, all things considered. And then the box office return was $585 million.
Nice.
Which, comparatively, is actually super low.
To where it went with Marvel Universe films in the future.
It is now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because like comic book movies in a lesser form now are like Star Wars, where it's like it or hate it, people go see it. Like I went and saw this new one simply so I could like be that. I wouldn't be that guy that's like, oh, you haven't seen it. Oh, then we can't have fun and talk about it.
Yeah. But at this time,
it's like you're withheld from like everywhere in like culture if you haven't seen it. So it's like, okay.
But at this time, my experience of Iron Man was, oh my god, you should really go see this. It's not another Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
You know, it was sort of like, this is different. This is new.
There's something interesting about this. Like, outside of the idea of, like, I wasn't really excited about an Iron Man movie.
Me either.
To be honest, I'm not even sure I saw it in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. But it turned out incredibly well. And the idea that it's launching this multi-universe arc to where we get to the point to where we have a podcast where we're talking about Iron Man in preparation of things to come. It's pretty fascinating. Go ahead.
It was interesting when I was watching this again earlier today, and it just brought back memories of when I did see it in theater. And
Me too.
The number one thought that I had then, as I did now, is Iron Man to me was that start-off point that told me, okay, comic movies are gonna fucking dominate. They finally got the technology right to push them forward.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I had the same thing where it's like the thing I thought then and I still think now is like I'm without question in love with Gwyneth Paltrow.
Dude, I wasn't a huge Gwyneth Paltrow fan, but she is super.
Ever
hot
since
in
I
this.
saw her in The World Tenenbaums, playing Margot Tenenbaum, I've had the biggest fucking crush on her. And her as Pepper Potts, equally as good, man.
So she is brilliant in this movie as Pepper Potts. Now, when we get to later movies, I have a less positive experience with her. But I gotta tell you, in this movie, Gwyneth Paltrow was perfect. She had the perfect tone. All her little conversations with Tony humanized him and made him interesting.
For sure.
And that was entirely him and her as actors and actresses playing off of each other.
The scene where she played Operation.
Yeah, the scene where she played Operation.
Where she pulled the little thing out of his heart and she's like, oh, it smells bad. Anytime that anybody in a movie references smell, it automatically brings me into the movie more, which is kind of weird. It makes it a little bit more real.
That is very weird. Okay.
If somebody's oh, it smells
that might be a thing
that
me as well, but I've
smelly.
never put my finger on that and been able to say that.
Save the door.
Yeah. What were you saying, Idify? By the way, Idify is Alexander.
It's funny. It's
Sorry, go
funny
ahead.
because the only movie I liked Gwyneth Paltrow in besides her involvement with Iron Man now was Seven, and that was it.
Dude, I don't even remember her in Seven.
She was Brad Pitt's wife. It was her head in the box.
I was going to say, spoilers,
she was
she's in the box.
Man, that's a great gift. What's in the box? Gwyneth Paltrow's in there. What a wonderful gift to have. I know.
All right, we're going to move on to the next segment called Secrets of the Marvel Universe.
So is this going to be structured for each film?
Absolutely. It's going to maintain, if this works out. I mean, at the end of it, we'll decide, I don't know if this structure works. But,
Sure.
But this, the whole structure of this is going to stick around through all the episodes to come. Unless a better idea pops up. So, Secrets of the Marvel Universe.
And one more question. Is this an adult podcast?
Can you curse on it? Yes.
Fuck yeah.
Well, I was going to bring up that Terrence Howard has a micro penis.
Oh.
And you can see it online. It's in a film where he's in a jail scene.
Who's Terrence Howard?
The guy that plays Rhodey in this
Rhodey.
one.
All right, so
Hey, if we're talking about
get a chance to
secrets
talk
of the
about
Marvel
Rhodey.
Universe,
I hope we get a chance to talk about Rhodey.
We'll do, if we can talk about it now in terms of actors and characters.
Okay, so I was super
I hope we
annoyed
get
that
a
they
chance
got.
to talk about his micro penis.
So I was
Me too.
super annoyed that they got rid of him, but
they didn't Terrence Howard?
They replaced him.
They
with
replaced
Don
him
Cheadle.
with Don Cheadle.
I
But
like
here's
Don
the
Cheadle
deal.
way more.
Well, here's the deal. I was so angry about it because I was like, "Fuck you! I'm invested in this Rhodey now." Oh, sorry. I'm invested in this Rhodey, and I don't need another one. But I went back and watched this. He was a shitty ass Rhodey.
See, I actually like
really
him as
was.
Rhodey. I prefer him over Don Cheadle. To me, he fits the character that
What?
You said you like Don
militaristic-
Cheadle more?
No, I like
No,
Terrence
really?
Howard more. And he
Interesting.
fits more of that militaristic, I don't know.
He's sort of a tight ass.
businessman. He to me, he fits that character. Don Cheadle, I guess he seems a little too small or something. I like
But he's
the
a
way
man with a proper sized tube, though, and that's one thing I can get behind.
We're a couple of weeks away from really getting into it, but I like the line in the second one when he references the idea that he's a different actor. He references it in the movie.
Really? I don't remember that.
I will admit the fact that the scene where he says "next time" was very satisfying to me.
Where he's
even
next
though,
time, baby.
even though I don't know anything about Iron Man, I knew, hey, he's gonna be Warhammer or War Machine, and it got me excited.
I think
Wait,
the
is he-
chemistry between
Oh,
Terrence
sorry.
Howard and Downey is way better than Don Cheadle and Downey.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Interesting.
That may be true. I don't know. I'll have to, because like I said, I haven't. These films in particular, or most movies, I don't rewatch after I see them in theaters.
Yeah.
So
It's got to be a really killer fucking movie for me to be like, I'm gonna watch that again.
on this topic, then let's talk about this after we watch the other ones. Say, have a Rhodey conversation when we get to the later.
I'm sure
there is
we
one
will.
thing I want to say in terms of the replacement of Rhodey. He initially was supposed to get a very, very large payday from this.
Yeah.
And his payday or his paycheck was larger than Robert Downey Jr.'s in the original Iron Man.
Wow.
And they ended up not delivering to him what was in the contract.
cheated him?
So that's why it's not in. Is because he quit.
They Dave
Because he didn't
Chappelled
get
him?
the money that he
So
was
I had
told he would
I had a
get.
total Tank experience. So in The Matrix, they had this character named Tank. He was my favorite character in The Matrix, absolutely, hands down. And then they replaced that character in the second movie, and they lost me in the second movie when they replaced the character. So I think I just may be sensitive to replacing characters. It just bugs me on some internal level.
On that particular note,
They didn't really replace Tank. they just kind of.
We're not talking about the Matrix.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying that
no,
in the
like-
past I've had trouble with characters changing.
On that particular note, Howard Stark. You see Howard Stark multiple times in images, and that actor gets replaced multiple times.
But they did a good job of it.
For sure. That Howard Stark is a different actor than the one who's in Captain America the First Avenger, and that actor is different than the one that's in Ant-Man. Like, the guy who plays Howard Stark is shifted around.
It's not that they do a better job of it. It's like that you never get enough time to study his face in any of that footage for it to stick, you know?
Yeah.
But
You see Terrence Howard and you see Don Cheadle, like, a decent amount of screen time.
very true. But what I will say is that I always recognize Howard Stark whenever I see him. There's something about the actors they choose. There's no point where I go, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
So they chose well.
Renee Zellweger.
All right, so to move on to the secrets of the Marvel Universe, one of the particular things is what we had just talked about, Terrence Howard saying next time,
His
baby,
micro penis.
whenever he sees the other Iron Man suit, which is a clear reference to him becoming War Machine.
Yeah.
What was Obadiah's, like, villain name? Because he's in the comics, but I forget, like...
I can't fucking think of it right now.
He has I didn't know that.
Yeah,
It
no,
does.
he
It's like
is.
It starts with an M, and it's not Mandarin.
Meltdown.
I don't know why I can't
Here,
think of it. Can one of you guys fact check us
look
real
it up,
quick?
but you guys go on. Keep going.
Or anybody in the chat, if you guys want to fact check us and pull it up. It starts with an M. I remember that.
By anybody,
so-
you mean the bots?
Morning
Oh,
Shark,
okay,
son.
Morning Shark, yeah.
Jarvis is his AI that kind of helps him do a lot of the stuff kind of going on behind the scenes. And Jarvis in the comic book universe is Tony Stark's butler.
Yep.
So yeah, that's
And
one.
not a robot.
And not a robot. The original Mark III armor was gold.
Ironmonger.
Ironmonger.
Oh,
that's
that
what it
makes
was.
sense, because he was
Ironmonger.
a weapons salesman.
The original Mark III armor was gold, so the very first time he completes like the suit that we actually get to see, Ironmonger. Thank you, Morning Shark. Yeah, it's solid gold, and in the actual comics, the original version of the Iron Man suit had the same solid gold thing. It was a while in the comic books before he got the red.
And he makes a good joke about it, too.
Yeah,
He's
he
like,
does.
isn't that a little ostentatious? And he was like, oh, I'm sorry, that's clearly not you. Jarvis, I love Jarvis.
Wait, doesn't Jarvis eventually become Vision?
He does,
does.
yes. You're spoiling future episodes.
Oh,
I'm just-
shit!
More than likely, anybody who's watching this has seen all of these movies. Or listening to it, I guess.
If you haven't, then you don't know who Vision is, so let's not worry about it.
Next up, the 10 rings are mentioned. And the 10
I know!
rings,
I had not noticed that the first time, and then I was like, oh, shit!
yeah, that is Mandarin's, like,
Organization.
yeah, his organization.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Like I said, I haven't seen, like, you named the year it came out, that's the last time I saw it. So little details like that I'm
2008.
not going to remember.
Also, the 1960s Iron Man theme song plays in the movie multiple times, which I don't really know the theme song. These are
I
just
didn't
facts that I
either.
got from online. But the scene where he's shooting craps in the casino, that music is like playing over it.
I mean, I was jealous as fuck at that part.
Christine Everhart, she's the reporter that he sleeps with,
Yep.
who works for Vanity Fair. In the comic books, she works for the Daily Bugle
Oh.
with
So
Spider-Man,
hot.
Peter
Yeah.
Parker.
That's what DKP was saying earlier, too.
No, that's what Tommy was saying.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm more of a Gwyneth Paltrow. We talked about this.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
there's
spoken
a
for,
there's a
fellas,
scene in
this
the movie where he's first testing out his flight abilities and he's flying through the city, and there's a poster of an Iron Man villain named Fin Fang Foom.
Yep.
Man, what a rat. We should have gotten that guy instead of the Mandarin.
They're not doing things. He's a
You'll
giant
never
fucking. He's a
see
dragon.
Fing
He's
Fang
like.
Foom
Yeah, he's a
coming.
weird looking.
He's a.
He's a alien looking thing, which actually, in terms of the universe, works nowadays. But
It's true.
in the scene where he's going up against the two F-22s, the F-22s are Whiplash 1 and Whiplash 2, which is a clear reference to the villain Whiplash, which we actually get him as a villain in
Mickey
Avengers.
Rourke's character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
There's one scene.
Wait, how is that a reference?
Well, they just use.
that's right,
the
because
name.
it's... Never mind, that's probably incorrect.
What?
Because there's the competing like weapon company. I forget what they're called. And, like,
Hammer Industries.
yeah, Hammer Industries. And like if those jets, I guess you could make a case that they're manufactured by Hammer.
At this point, this is
I
just an
don't know.
Easter egg that's put in there. like for the sake of people who understand or know who Whiplash
Yeah, but like
is.
that has no direct reference to
No, it doesn't.
Whiplash. So
No.
that's why I was trying to make it connect, but
As
yeah,
of
I don't think it's
2008,
supposed
though, it
to.
totally works. The scene where all of his armor is getting taken off and Pepper Potts walks in, and he's like, let's be honest, you've caught me doing worse things. In the background of that scene, you can see the Captain America shield, like a prototype version of it.
Yep.
And the final one, in the fight that he has between him and Ironmonger, in the background you can see a business called Nexon Corporation, which in the comic books, the Nexon Corporation were a villainous corporation that they were the ones who had his parents killed. So obviously they don't stick to that canon, but pretty interesting reference nonetheless.
I got a
Absolutely.
little spoiler fact for you guys.
Yeah, throw it at us.
One of the guys that was in the 10 Rings in the cave was Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. He
Another
actually does a
little
lot of music
interesting-
for Iron Man.
That's awesome.
Another little interesting character that I noticed, one of the reporters is the guy that goes to Lucius Fox saying that he knows the identity of Batman.
Oh, it's the same actor?
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting. Didn't know that.
That is a big spoiler. I did not know those universes were connected.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right, we're going to move to the next segment, which is let's review the movie. And I'm just going to ask you guys a few different questions to kind of get it started out. And then at the end of this particular segment, we're going to score the movie 1 out of 10, but it's on a 100-point scale, so that means you can give it like a 9.2.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
All right, so
Like
I want to start with
gymnastics.
what were your favorite scenes from the movie?
You want to go
Yeah.
first, Pat?
Paul,
Sure.
if you wanna
All
go
right.
ahead.
So things I loved. First off, Phil Coulson is hands down my absolute favorite thing about this movie. He shows up in and he's just sort of nondescript in the background. Says, "Hey, can we make an appointment? Hey, can we got to do the thing." He says Shield. I just love this as
what
a
works
character.
what works about that especially is like in 2008 when you were first watching this, you had no idea how big of a
Exactly.
character he was eventually going to be. So like that, looking back at it now, it's almost like that's an Easter egg, like retroactively made
sure.
one.
And, like,
that's real strange.
He's all over this movie.
Yeah.
And
He's
he's like,
multiple
he
scenes.
is vital to the entire third act. Like, the entire third act is him and S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of saving the day.
Yeah.
And that completely was gone
Well, I don't
from
know.
my
I
memory.
think that might be a little strong. They
Well,
walked in there and then they're like,
he escorts Pepper Potts and provides all the red shirts to get killed. So,
but then what though?
and then
Then they
he-
just disappear while she
then
stands in
he
the
helps-
same spot outside.
But without
like
I'll say
for
this,
an
just
hour.
to support Paul, without Shield, without Agent Coulson, she would not had the confidence to go and try to get
No,
Ironmonger
I was talking.
Exactly.
I was talking more about like their absence.
you're saying they weren't very effective.
Well, like where'd backup? Did backup
No, they
ever
got-
come? Like
They got destroyed.
They got destroyed. But my point is they were there. And honestly, that's kind of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s job, is the people to get their ass kicked until the Avengers show up. They're the buffer.
Speaking of that scene in particular, when Ironmonger kicks all their asses, and then you see him chasing her down the hallway, and it's like a narrow hallway, and he's destroying things as he runs through. They use that like trope of like somebody skinny running through a short hallway and a giant thing destroying it so much in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
We get Hulk doing it. We
Yeah.
get I think there's some stuff in
Sony
Thor.
ripped him off. Remember, I'm the Juggernaut, bitch.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so he's my big thing. I loved, hands down, and this just blew me away, the scene where he says, and I'm going to get the quote wrong, Jarvis, check the flight surfaces. And it's the first time he actually flies, and all the bits on his suit start just...
Icing over.
No.
No?
He's just sitting in the thing, and then he says, check the flight surfaces, and the music builds, and it's this circle around the Iron Man suit, and all the like little wings and stuff on his legs are coming out and closing again. And at the end, Jarvis says, hey, we gotta run some tests, it's gonna take some time. And he goes, well, sometimes you gotta run before you walk, and he just takes off.
Yeah.
I seeing this movie years later, I like wanted to jump out of my seat and go, yeah, fly that Iron Man. So I love that part.
We did get that scene, and you see this a lot especially during, I would say between like 2005 and 2015, where there's something that's about to happen, and then they're saved last second, and then there's a room full of people on computers, and they all stand up and cheer. And if you're watching that movie like on opening night, everyone in the theater also
Cheers,
does it.
yes.
They had one of those moments when
They did with the fighter
was-
pilots, yeah.
where his chute wouldn't open.
Oh, so that's my my ones.
Just
I
say
can
it
go
out
get a
loud.
beer, and I can still hear you guys.
Oh,
Okay.
Sounds good.
Technology.
Yay! One of the things that, or something just, I guess, in general that really stood out to me with these movies is watching them back then. I didn't think the action scenes were that great. And this most recent rewatch, like, they're well choreographed fights that have like really great cinematography that show like the scene where there's a motorcycle driving by and Ironmonger grabs it while it's in motion and like swings it into Iron Man and hits him. That scene was insane.
It was brilliant. And you know what I thought when he picked up that motorcycle? I was like, oh my god, they ripped that off in Civil War when the
Winter Soldier,
Winter
Black
Soldier
Panther.
and Black Panther are doing the thing. But I wanted to say that Obadiah Stane was so much more of a believable bad guy than I remembered him being. Like, I remembered this movie, the bad guy, what is the name of that bad guy? The Ironmonger outfit. I remember that being unbelievable to me. I was like, oh, what is this crappy CGI? I didn't buy this at all, blah, blah, blah.
Well,
but watching it this time, I was like, this is actually pretty good.
The part where it zooms in on his boots, preparing for liftoff, that you can tell like their budget was not spent on that part. That part looked very terrible.
Yeah,
That was one of the only scenes in the movie where I was like, that CGI looks pretty shitty. Which is like, it's like for like 2.5 seconds maybe. It's like not really a big complaint.
But I was surprised. Like, when I look back on it, I thought about it like Doomsday. I thought it was like a really amazingly crappy, and I was dreading when that scene came up. And then when it happened, like when Obadiah is crawling through the roof to come after, it's either Iron Man or Pepper Potts, I forget which. And it just worked for me. It seemed real to me. I was scared of that big Ironmonger.
we're going to talk about him a little bit more, but I'll just say
Yeah.
on the top level, I didn't really like him that much as a villain.
Yeah, we'll get more into it.
Yeah. We
But
have a whole
I found
section
his
talking
motives to
specifically
be
about
questionable.
villains.
I'd like
say
to.
that.
I'd like to hear what Idafy's favorite scenes were. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Obadiah was a weak villain. His motivation really made no sense. Honestly, one of my favorite scenes is where he's just really pissed and he starts just fucking donning on the finally completed Iron Man armor. It's one of my favorite scenes.
You mean when he's getting
Another
ready
one
to
is-
go kill all those terrorists?
Where he's
Yeah.
like
And
screwing,
then
he's got the
another one of my
screwdriver and
favorite
he's screwing it
scenes is-
into his arm.
Yeah, that is a badass scene.
Another
Go on,
one of my
Mr. Defy.
favorite scenes. I can't hear.
Like,
Another
go on.
one of my favorite scenes is where he fucking encounters the tank. The tank just shot him out of the air, and then he dodges the
Yeah.
bullet, shoots the missile, then just fucking turns back and starts walking.
Walks away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was one thing, when I first... It's really weird how, like, your opinion changes on shit. When I first watched this movie, that was my problem with it. Which was, this is the way that I used to describe it, as like it being a less than stellar movie. Which was like, well, it's fucking really cool, and you get, like, go through all, like, the gearing up montage, learning and all that, and he gets this suit, and he flies over, and it's like one of the coolest fucking scenes ever, and you don't get that again for the rest of the fucking movie.
Yeah.
Now, because that's all the movies are these days, I enjoyed just like the very low key scenes
For sure.
way more.
So true.
Because like I'm fucking sick to death of like just the stock action footage that you get that fills it. So like yeah, like I completely 180 in my opinion of this movie.
The
in
threat
that
level
regard.
continues to increase over time. Obviously, it's coming to a big head in May. But it's nice kind of seeing a small, more contained story. And specifically, one of the things I want to talk about is like, I love origin stories. I love a good origin movie that explains, how a character became what they became. But specifically the very beginning of this movie, the way that he's kind of introduced as a character when he's talking about like, that's how America does it. That's how Dad did it. And this is the Jericho or whatever he says.
And that's how I do it.
And that's how we do it or something like that.
You see, to me,
I love the whole buildup of like him being kind of a piece of shit. The very first scene that you see him in, he's got like a glass full of like some sort of alcohol, which is so very not superhero movies. I mean, maybe Wolverine a little bit.
Oh yeah,
we'll
get. I want to talk about that where it's like they definitely dialed it back on like seeing people straight up die, and like there were some scenes that it's like the very first scene of the fucking movie where like the Humvee gets attacked, like for a PG-13 like comic book movie. That was like shocking, like a pretty visceral scene. Like,
so I wanted to talk.
There was
about
no
that.
blood. That's what allowed it to be PG-13. But still, like,
I wanted to talk about that. That was super successful in this movie, and it's something that I feel like the movies has lost. This is something this movie had that I haven't seen as much in the others. And what I called it was the Pulp Fiction storytelling methodology. So the first part of this movie is sort of out of order, right? You get these pieces that are not sequential. And it all revolves around that crazy moment where you're trapped in that SUV and an IED goes off and there's all that violence and all that. You don't see any blood, but man, you feel shell-shocked watching it. That's straight out of Bunker. What's that? It's straight out of a really serious war movie. And that worked for me in a serious way. It invested me in these characters.
Yeah, it establishes like these are real people. They're like laughing, that they have feelings like, oh, they're nervous. Like, and that's purely for the setup to like have them whacked, right?
And it
does it really quick and it's effective.
And like I like those guys. All of them die. And that to me, that was just so brilliantly, exactly like you were saying. It was so brilliantly done. But then they tell us the story of like how you got there, and we sort of catch up. And then you get this sort of scene where he's recovering in the cave, and that seemed. The two played against each other brilliantly because you had all this action in the beginning, and then you had this long sort of drudge where he was getting all of his getting beat up and getting starting to make his suit. And before we get to more action, you had this sort of drudge where you're like, hey, let's learn about these characters. This guy trapped in a cave, and let's learn about all these bad guys and blah blah blah. That got me there because they had organized things so well. Just the layout.
Yeah, this movie had really good character development.
Leads us nicely into my next question I want to ask you guys, and I want to talk about the humor.
Well, hold on. I want to say one more thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Before we go into anything specific, his arc for me didn't really work in this film.
Iron Man.
So yes,
before this particular segment is things that we like about this movie.
No, hold on. This isn't I dislike that bit. I found him to be far too likable, even before he was like, "Oh, I shouldn't."
Wasn't
do this
enough of
anymore.
an asshole.
Like at no point in the movie was I like, "No, I'd hang out with that guy." I don't think he's necessarily completely wrong, like the movie paints him out to be. But like his arc is to be like he was a piece of shit at first, but I didn't see it that way. I was like, I see what he's doing. He's not like what Obadiah Stane was doing, like that. And it was him by proxy kind of doing it as well, but like against his knowledge.
No, it makes sense.
But he was likable. He wasn't like, had they made him an asshole in the beginning of the movie, instead of being nice to all those soldiers and like, yeah, of course take a picture with me, that would have made it to where like he becomes nice and like the cool Robert Downey Jr. But he was likable as fuck from beginning to end. So like I said, that's not necessarily a criticism, because that's his character. He just wants to be liked and he's cool and whatever, right?
He's charismatic.
But that made like his arc a little bit less impactful for me.
I think that makes sense. He actually is a little bit more humorous before he like dons the suit and like jumps into everything. There are moments of humor, but I do think like the first half of the movie has significantly more humor, which makes sense because as the stakes raise, it becomes less humorous.
But you wanted to talk about humor.
I don't
in general,
necessarily
right?
agree with DKP.
I don't expect a lot of people to
have him be an asshole. I don't think you need to have him be an asshole to make him not. You don't have that character defining moment.
I mean,
his character defining moment is politically he's changed his opinion. He no longer wants to supply weapons. So that's the character arc right there.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying like I think it could have been a more effective arc, because for people like me who have a different opinion like of like how right and wrong something is, like just simply being a weapons manufacturer, especially the type that he was, where it's just like coming with new technologies. I don't see that as like the same thing as like war profiteering exactly.
But
so like that arc to me didn't work as well. But like had he been an asshole and then did like that would have like really arrogant or something, that would have made it work better for me. Just personally.
So one of the things I noticed,
I'm actually glad they didn't have that arc, because that kind of arc in characters is way too typical in movies.
So I want to follow up on what Idify was saying. So
Sure.
Here's what my thought on that, and this is what occurred to me this time. I hadn't noticed this before. Here's one thing. He wasn't Batman. So Batman has this Bruce Wayne persona he puts on where he's sort of an asshole and he buys out an entire ballerina troupe and sends them...
Buys out a ballerina?
It's where he pretends to be rad as fuck.
He pretends to be rad as fuck. Exactly, but he's actually... But here's what I noticed. This movie is not about Batman. His Iron Man...
Astute observation.
Well, but it easily could have been, is what I'm saying.
Right.
Instead, Robert Downey Jr. made his character incredibly unique. And not only that, he did it, his Bruce Wayne version of the character, incredibly unique. He did it within the first 15 minutes of the movie. Yeah. You know, like his Bruce Wayne, his rich playboy character was completely Robert Downey Jr. Specific, and it defined this character for me.
For sure.
One thing I will note, you could see this movie's age just a little bit as far as some of like the styles that were in.
Oh, dude.
His long hair was really bothering me.
Agent Coulson was in his dad's suit.
He was
in this like big suit. It's pretty funny. But speaking of funny, I want to talk about the humorous moments. So you guys mentioned the very beginning of the movie. I love the whole Humvee scene, the humor that he has, the banter that he has between all the soldiers, where he's like, "Oh my God, you're a woman." He's like, "Now that I know it, I can't stop looking at your bone structure," or whatever he said. And
the whole bit with the gang signs, like it was all meticulously
like, "No
crafted to like work, and it did.
And it did.
Like they like because picture it, like you have to do so much, you have to establish so fucking much in that 1 2-minute long scene. Like I wouldn't doubt like that was the most rewritten scene in like the entire movie.
Well, they actually, this movie, there was a bit of improv to it. So they were kind of writing the script as they were going along. It was kind of like a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode where the overarching story is put into place, but they get to kind of
completely fuck what I said, huh? No, that's good to know though. Yeah. But like, if you've ever seen interviews with Robert Downey Jr., like that's kind of just how he acts. He has that like that. I guess persona of you know what? I'm gonna try to stop looking for the word. It's like bravado, like about him, right? But yeah, so like that. I guess he's more just playing himself, which is like not. That's why people said he's born to play this role.
I think he's more.
I think it was not just because he revitalized his career, but like. Yeah, like he happens to fit the character even like on a personal level, kind of.
I don't know that we can say that he played himself, but we can say that he played a character he was very familiar with. So that's a character we've seen him play repeatedly. So it was something, and in a way he got to redeem it, right? So like I like thinking of this as like the sequel to Less Than Zero, right? So what if
that's a when I think of, it's funny you actually bring that up. When I think of Robert Downey Jr. before this movie, that's the only movie I can place him in.
Oh, he did this one about a menage a trois too. That is pretty.
There was
good.
a movie that I liked that he did when I was a kid called Heart and Soul, where all these people died in a bus accident, and they're all ghosts, and they haunt Robert Downey Jr. But they can jump into his body and take him over. So it's Robert Downey Jr. playing like a ghost who's taking him over, who's possessed him. And it's like a romantic comedy, and it is so silly.
But
I hate to break it to you.
Everybody knows him from St. Elmo's Fire.
Yeah,
that was his big.
I mean,
which
I hate to break it to you.
Ourselves. Robert Downey Jr., even in his drug phase, is still a really good actor.
No,
he killed it. It was just.
He was.
Oh yeah, there was definitely that. He was also, an evil scientist in Tim Allen's Shaggy Dog as well. We've learned. But Pep, I hate to fucking break it to you, man. I don't know if you remember how Less Than Zero ends, but this is not a sequel to that.
No, I know. I just like to think of it as a different take on that same character.
Sure.
Like instead of turning into a
had he not
guy,
OD'd after like having to blow dudes to pay back a debt to God, I wish I remembered the other movie that guy's in. It's recent.
In my story, he builds a suit of armor.
He turned it around.
Exactly.
You know?
So my favorite humor in this movie is the very last scene before the end credits. The scene where he's giving the pre-written speech that Agent Coulson has given him, and he says the classic line that defined this movie, that everybody was saying to each other, like, you know, you'd hang out with your bros and you go, I am Iron Man. You know, it was seminal. It was that was so perfectly done.
Well, that like sums up his character completely.
It does.
Where it's like he's far too narcissistic to let that go.
Yeah.
And
Well,
not be you know, praised by everyone for doing that.
It was a shock, I think, for people that any time that we saw it, there was an expectation of superhero anonymity that we got with things like
Superman
Spider-Man and things like that. So, Superman, Batman, all of that kind of stuff. So to see this character come out and say who he was a great moment.
It really was. It
And a great
subverted
way to,
all
like,
expectations.
very last line, roll credits.
Those credits hit immediately after too, which like
with that,
I thought
except
was good.
except
Awesome
for
song.
everyone stands up and starts taking pictures, except for Christine, who's just sitting there with her arms crossed, looking all pissed.
Yeah. Man, fuck Christine. It's all about that pepper. I want that salt and pepper. I want to put that salt in that pepper. You know what I'm saying?
My favorite
Pops.
scene, my favorite scenes in this movie, believe it or not, all of them are with Terrence Howard. Him and the chemistry with both of them is just fucking fantastic.
interesting.
Talking about the comedy where
I share some sort of connection with Terrence Howard. I don't want to go into it here, but
when they're on the airplane,
Yeah.
and they're ordering all the food, and he's
Micro-penis
like,
connection?
get some sake, let's bring some sake. And he's like, no sake, no drinks, we're working, like, no. And then the next scene is them with a bunch of flight attendants dancing on a stripper pole, and his arms around him, and they're like both
The
nodding,
stripper
and
pole is
he's-
extending automatically,
even
like
the
he
scene-
has a.
Even the scene where Terrence Howard's in there and they're identifying a bogey, just that dialogue between him and Downey is just fucking hilarious.
Oh, yeah. He's like, it's me. He was like, what do you mean? He's like, the bogey, it's me.
no, but even his drunk talk was like, well done. Because if you listen to what it was like, you know, when I put on this uniform every day,
Oh, it's true.
and I look at every other person wearing it, I know they got my back. And it's like, it's not over the top
DKP.
goofy. Like, that's some
question
shit
for you.
like,
Knowing that
I
he
have
has a
buddies in the
micro,
military, they would say that.
Hold on.
they
Both
changed
you
your
guys are
opinion of
overtalking each
Terrence
other.
Howard.
Well, that was the first thing I thought when I saw him on screen was like, oh yeah, that's Terrence Howard. He's got a micro dick. Because I learned that after I saw this movie, obviously. But yeah.
You realize I'm never going to be able to look at the man the same again. Thank you.
Poor fucking... Why would he do a nude scene in another movie?
Like,
Like,
maybe
that's
he's
his
a
fault.
grower.
No, you can't. Well, I'll
I'm
pull
sorry.
it up.
All right.
But
No,
he
so-
was
please do not
fucking
pull it up.
badass
So-
in Hustle and Flow.
Mountains,
my wife,
Mountains
my
is
wife
here.
immediately
She
comes up
wants
behind
to see
DKP
it.
to look at this picture of his micro penis.
So here, if we were talking humor, one of the humorous pieces that I loved and really worked for me was the, and he only calls him dummy.
Top result, Terrence Howard got a baby dick. From something awful forums. All right, hold on.
The robot that with the fire extinguisher was
He's like, "Stay away from
hilarious.
me." And then the scene where he like falls through all the floors, and then he just
and he sprays him. It's perfect. But here's the deal: all of that humor set up that brilliant scene where we thought Iron Man was going to die because he wasn't able to get to the replacement heart or arc reactor, and that robot is the one that saves his life at the end.
and he just like reaches down and hands it to
and
him.
hands it to him. Oh, that so worked for me after
For
all
sure.
that time of like, you know, that robot can't do anything right, and then he like saves the day, and the whole movie revolves around it. That's great for me.
All right, Idify, do you have any other humor moments that you want to mention before we move on?
Another like Pevin said, the robot moment, just the build up, and then the fucking where he finally falls through the building, and then he does the fire
Mhm.
extinguisher in his suit is just fantastic. It was such a good build up for a joke.
All right, let's talk about our issues with this
Well,
movie.
hold on. I didn't get to say my favorite scenes.
Oh, sorry, go
You
ahead.
skipped me.
Favorite
Um,
scenes or funny scenes?
Favorite
Both?
scenes.
Okay, go ahead.
One of the scenes I thought was the best was like when Pepper Pot. Sorry, I was just laughing about something else. When Pepper Potts comes downstairs and like catches him doing shit.
Yeah.
And that was good. But later, like when Pepper Potts, like my other favorite scene was when like he was like gonna kiss Pepper Potts.
And he just leaves.
But then
there.
my favorite scene was at the very end when he was talking to Pepper Potts. You know what I'm saying?
All right, so what didn't we like about this movie?
All right, are we talking about the villain or like?
We're not talking about the villain yet. We're gonna move on to the villains because I want to have a segment every time where we just like talk about the villains of
because that's a big portion
because
of
the
like,
villains
what I
are like
didn't
a big piece of the MCU. So I want to give them their own little segment.
So, we're gonna have that portion in all these Marvel movies.
Yep.
Yes, it's definitely something that I think is worth having its own segment.
So the parts of this movie that didn't work for me were
nothing.
Yeah.
It was perfect. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, I actually have a hard time finding like specific. Like, you give me other Marvel movies, and I can point. Oh man, this thing didn't work for me, or I hated this guy.
I got a couple scenes.
So my least favorite parts about it were so the first time I saw it, my least favorite parts were trying to keep up with the Obadiah Stane plot line. That part was sort of trudging along, so that was the hard part for me. That's about the only thing I can point out.
Can't talk about that yet. We gotta wait for the villain.
Alexander, do you have anything?
Yeah, so a couple of scenes that really kind of on like repeated viewings I started noticing. First, the bullets hitting the suit. I'm sorry, those should have gone through that metal. Those are some really fucking thick slug bullets. For that metal not to be damaged
from the plane.
In the beginning,
the
in the beginning of the film,
gun.
where he's finally breaking out of the camp.
Oh, okay.
I had that same thought where it's like, how is he gonna stop that 50 cal? Because he's gonna have to. Because like that armor, like the Mark II armor, it's whatever the fuck it is, unobtainium, whatever. That could stop it, but like
the Mark I armor was built out of old
like
Tony Stark
like pots and pans
with a box of scraps.
All right, so here's that's a great Obadiah Stane impression. So here's the one correction or the one excuse I can give myself for that is that he built it out of old missiles. So theoretically, you would build missiles out of bullet-resistant materials to keep them from being shot out of the sky. So that's my only comment. But I also had that problem. Like his hands were just like fucking leather. If one stray bullet had hit one of those hands, he was fucked.
I think a lot of my problems really dealt with that first part of the movie. Don't get me wrong. I still think it is an amazing movie.
Are you talking about the one scene that we spent 15 minutes talking about how great it was? That scene?
No. Like, don't get me wrong, it's still, visually, it's still very good scenes. But, like, you have to suspend disbelief on a lot of it. First, so we already talked about
specifically referencing.
So, the second part
you're talking about the breakout scene. Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking to that whole section where he's making the Jericho, but yeah, like, he's doing it with two people. But yeah, they're checking on him constantly, so they don't know that he's building a fucking suit. Okay, whatever. We'll let that go.
Yeah, there has to be some suspense of disbelief.
Exactly. And like I said, it doesn't take away from the movie. It's still a great movie, but...
Like I said, if I was going to have a lot of criticisms of this movie, it would be like if I watched it the way I would watch most movies, where it's like, if shit just doesn't add up or make sense, like, that kind of bothers me. It bothered your wife, Tom, and you guys watched it. But I guess somehow, like, it didn't bother me because I knew, like, kind of what this movie was doing. It's a comic book movie. It's not meant to, like, that bothered me in Star Wars, but that's, like, supposed to be a little bit less, this is going to sound really strange, and I can't really define this maybe correctly, less bombastically just fantasy, like, this is comic book heroes. It's supposed to be fun, campy.
Yeah.
Star Wars, I don't think it's supposed to be campy in that sort of way, where, it's like, it didn't really bother me in this, but that would, like, if I was to grade it on that, I would have a shitload of criticisms.
But right here in that scene that you're talking about... Oh, sorry?
The one, just real quick before you guys go off, the last scene that really bothered me in that whole terrorist Nine Rings thing was, he destroys the camp, he flies off in this freaking heavy armor, and he crash lands in the desert. I'm like, okay, that should have been dead, but whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, like that. That's another one of those things where it's like I thought that too. It's like okay.
So what bugged me there is how did they know where he was? He gets rescued like 5 minutes later. How the fuck did they know where he was?
They didn't. They said they were searching for him. Still, right? Like, because they hadn't confirmed his death.
Mountain specifically brought up while we were watching it. How is it that the person who finds him is Terrence Howard?
Yeah, how is it Rhodey?
And I gave some excuses of like, well, he's a military guy, and that he was with him with the Humvees, and he's a good friend. Of course he would be out looking for him constantly.
Well, okay, but if we want to dissect it that much,
but yeah, that's kind of the thing. Is
that assumes he's been
unbelievable. But
that assumes he's been on a daily search.
I mean, if we're going to dissect
months.
it that much, then why are we talking about? No, why the hell is he down there anyway?
I know a way that it makes sense.
Yeah.
So they noticed the giant explosions in the middle of the fucking desert. And they were like, that's got to be something. Then Terrence Howard... okay, never mind. Then Terrence Howard... I don't want to segue too much. Got on the plane and was like, that has to be Tony. We're going to go confirm his death. But he happened to be alive. There you go.
I'll take it. Something I bring up that I didn't really care about with this movie is all of the music that was written for the movie. Like all of the, like AC/DC stuff, all that was fine because it works for Tony Stark.
That's definitely like, he's a white guy who likes rock and roll. Yeah. What are we going to play?
But
AC/DC, of course.
All that was fine, but it was when he was like, I don't know, putting on his suit for the first time, it's like, da-da-da, 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 da-da-da.
That didn't work for you?
It's all that kind of stuff that just... In 2008, I'm sure it was fine and epic, and it had a great build to it, but it just was a little too corny for me.
All right. So I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying I'm a sucker for that. So that is straight out of Star Trek when they show you the Enterprise the first time, which they do in every Star Trek movie, and it's so exactly. I'm a sucker for that. You give me a good flyby, I'm a happy man.
Well, I don't have any criticisms about the music because I don't remember the music.
I mean, that's in and of itself.
So like it wasn't like something I didn't like because I just didn't notice it. But like if you were to be like, can you describe some of the music from Iron Man? Like I could not do it.
It's just a bunch of guitars.
Yeah, it is.
No,
heavy distortion.
Well, I guess that means I truly don't remember because I was like, no, I thought it was just generic comic book hero music, which is like the not like Superman.
That's horns,
but
and a lot of the future Marvel movies they use like
that's how I remember.
But it's like,
I watched this movie this afternoon. That's how I remember it in my head. So apparently, it's so forgettable that I've like my brain like tried to fill the space with shit. Yeah. So yeah, like it wasn't bad because I didn't notice it, but like I don't really have any. I don't got any positive feedback for it. I'll say that.
So can we talk about?
And I historically hate AC/DC. So like that won me did me no favors.
Yeah. One more thing I want to touch on that I didn't care for, and you guys have kind of touched on it as well already. But although I do love a great origin movie, I feel like from the point that he was captured to the point that he broke out it ran a little long for me comparatively to the rest of the movie.
Dude, I was shocked. Like,
didn't work for me as well.
When I pulled up the movie to watch it, I was like, oh, God, it's 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I feel like that scene could have been shortened to make it an hour 45.
Granted, like, he built a great relationship with that guy, I can't remember his name.
I also can't remember his name.
The guy who basically inspired him to become Iron Man. Do something with this.
I would have thought at the very end of the movie, they would have nodded back to him, like,
yeah, for sure.
This is for you.
He was a great character.
They hardly ever go back to him.
No, they don't.
All. And he's his version. He could be his version of "with great power comes great responsibility."
For sure. Well, you saying that dude was Tony Stark's Uncle Ben?
Yeah, he was sort of Tony Stark's Uncle Ben, but they don't use him that way. Is what I was saying. They didn't make him like Tony Stark doesn't go. And I'm doing this for Battery Guy. He's
for okay. Whatever you want to call him.
All right, let's all individually score the movie real quick. And can you write down our scores?
Sure.
If you don't mind, Paul.
Not at all. Let's start with Idify.
Idify, what would you score this movie out of 10?
Out of 100.
I'm going to have to give, minus my little minor complaints, this is a 10. It's a perfect origin movie for a character.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
What?
All right.
Calm down.
I'll go
DKP?
next. I'm going to give it an 8. Like, I don't know if, like, okay, probably, and I don't know this, we'll know in like 12 or 13 weeks, probably Guardians is the only one I might score a 10 because it was just so different. it clicked. But like this was like an 8. 8's pretty. 8.5 actually.
8.5.
Yeah.
All right.
Because it's very competent, but there were a lot of inconsistencies.
For sure.
I'm gonna go with
That's a
9.1.
good score for me too. Wait, you're gonna go what?
9.1.
Oh, okay.
This was clearly an A.
I want you to define the 0.1 part, please.
The point one is
You
that,
gotta have something specific in
absolutely.
mind for
So the point one is because it was just slightly better than a really good movie. To me, a 90 is a really good movie. This was just a little better, but it wasn't. I did not like have orgasms while I was watching it, so that's like a 9.5.
If it was porn,
You could've-
definitely at
like,
least a 9.2.
that. You could have
Exactly.
changed that, you know. That's up to
That's
you, not the
true.
movie.
I should have been doing my
Let's
part.
talk about Pepper Potts. No.
Yes. Can we?
So I was gonna give it a 9.1.
Oh shit!
I know, but I don't want too much consistency, so I'm gonna say 9.2.
All right.
9.2.
Shit, Unite. Were you really?
Yeah, I swear.
Wow, that's
Just because
such a weird
in
fucking
a similar
score
thing where it's like,
for two people to come up with independently.
to be fair, when I'm putting all these in my head, I'm automatically
Ranking
using the past experience of like all the other movies and where they stand. So I want to make sure that I'm giving this movie the credit that it deserves, while at the same time, there are movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that I think are dramatically better, and I want to make sure I give myself room to breathe in there. So, 9.2.
All
You know
right.
what? I just gotta say, because I know I heard from the Peanut Gallery, calm down because I gave it a 10. Reason I give this a 10, and I'm looking at the overall arching process, is without this movie and the success of this movie, you would have not had any of the rest of them. So
that's
to
not
me,
that's not a
that
fair fucking
alone-
thing to grade it on, though.
No.
To me,
Because,
that
like-
alone gives it a 10.
But we didn't set up the rules. I mean, that seems like a reasonable.
Right, but just in my
I'm just
opinion,
defending my 10. Yeah, I'm just defending my 10.
well, that's not a good defense, sir. But you can rank
I think
it
it's a
whatever you
fine
want.
defense.
Like, yeah, the movie kind of sucked, but it was super important to the industry, so I'm giving it a higher score. You can't do that.
He could do whatever the
Based
hell
on
he
just
wants.
on the
When
movie
Guardians
itself.
comes around and it gets 10s, you could thank Iron Man for that.
When Incredible Hulk comes around and gets 1.2s,
Dude, that's the thing. I'm real weird about that because I remember liking that one.
Well, I also like it. So
We're not talking about
we-
the.
we
I
should
like
We're
go-
talking about the Ed
well.
Norton.
Yeah, the
one,
one,
right?
That's the one we're talking.
Yeah,
about.
that's
I
the next
remember
one.
really liking that, but
Well,
it might be because I just like Ed Norton a shitload.
I gotta
Yeah, me
wait till
too.
I see it again before
I'm
I
also a
make any
big
Yeah,
Seth
like-
Roth fan.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Just opened my. I just opened my phone and I had a picture up still from earlier. Kind of surprised me.
So yeah, let's go ahead and move on and start talking about the villains. Specifically, there are two villains. This segment's called "What a Bunch of A-Holes."
So can I start off by the thing that I hated most about this movie?
Yeah, please.
Because it directly relates to this. And the thing I hated most about this movie is that I didn't understand who the bad guy was at any point in time in the movie. And I think it was done intentionally. It just didn't work for me. So like throughout that whole scene where he was stuck in the cave, they kept saying, here's another bad guy. Here's another bad guy. Here's another bad guy. Ooh, this bad guy has a burned face. Here's a bad guy that does this. And here's the Obadiah Stane, who is clearly a bad guy.
Yeah.
And they didn't do a good job of like telling me why it was important that there were all these bad guys. You could have consolidated big Muslim man with Raza into one bad guy, and I would have been perfectly happy.
the guy with the beard that like all the villagers got to beat the
No,
shit out
like
of.
oddly enough, I have to disagree like 100%. Like big Muslim man with beard, as we'll refer to him moving forward, I suppose. Like really early on, it's like okay, that guy's just like the sock puppet for that dude. But like what they thought that it was great was like that would normally be the big villain in something.
Right.
But he gets just like totally stomped by like introducing like oh yeah, well like this guy's like kind of shady, but he's probably gonna rely on this other dude. Like and they like the monologues and shit that guy gets
That worked for
makes you think like no, that's gonna be like the philosophical like we're the same, you and I, T-Stuck, that sort of bit at the end, which they don't do. Instead, like that dude's a chump, you find out, and just gets whacked. Like I thought that worked really well for me somehow. Like,
Fascinating. Cool.
See,
because in the future, keep note of this: Marvel movies for villains are just like that's the dude, And you're going to know that from the very beginning, and it does not change throughout the entirety of the story. Mostly.
Yeah, but I feel like their arcs, the arc of the villain is more interesting in future movies.
Yes.
Whereas, like, to me, the arc didn't really exist in this movie. There were two versions.
The main villain still sucked. I'm not disputing that.
To me, Obadiah Stane, there is a scene that was either cut out or I guess they just didn't, I don't know, edit it well in post or something. But it goes from Obadiah being like, he's kind of weird and suspicious, to full-on fucking villain. To where it's like, I was the one at the meeting that said you're not good enough for the job. Yep. And, like, it cuts to scenes of him being the guy who hired him. It just, like, it jumps the shark for him as a villain of being.
Oh, you mean like they really put the pedal to the metal to be like, all right, there's the fight's coming up, we gotta make this dude an asshole and quick.
There's a scene early on when whenever he's eating the Burger King cheeseburger and he's sitting down and he has the conversation. He's like, we're getting out of weapons. I don't know what we're going to do yet. And then he gets on the mic and he's like, no. The thing to take away from this is that Tony is back.
Yeah.
Where, like, that character and the character we got at the end of the movie
don't match.
He built it out of a box of scraps.
Well,
like,
I mean,
that to me, there wasn't a good transitional scene.
So he's like, he's either at 100 or he's the Jeff Bridges. Well, Tony, look, listen, well, but like, I thought he was gonna straight up like rape Pepper Potts. Like it didn't seem like I will say like that. He was extremely threatening in that part. Like, it made me uncomfortable. And that is a very rare thing to do, and I don't think if it was Gwyneth Paltrow on the line, I wouldn't feel that way. But, like, he was very just sinister in that scene.
There's something I want to talk about that I don't know where it necessarily fits in, but this is a good point to at least bring it up. There are moments in this movie that definitely would not work today.
Dude,
because there is so much,
I alluded to that
what
earlier,
is considered sexual harassment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not just between Obadiah and Pepper.
No, between Tony and
where
Pepper.
He's like forcing her to dance at this big event and like pulling her up close and all this stuff. The stuff that's like, that dude's your boss. Like,
you're totally pulling a Weinstein here.
You're pulling a Weinstein.
Look though, and this is kind of adding to your point more. This is playing devil's advocate for the movie itself. But in the end, you finally do realize that no, she wanted it. Like, that's what the movie also says. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no, I mean, we all kind of knew that there was going to be a Pepper Tony relationship, but that doesn't necessarily make the way that he advances himself upon her any more acceptable.
Yeah.
There is a way that, like, two people who are interested in each other build a relationship and find out that they're going to fall in love. And like the moments where I was talking about where he pulls out the arc reactor, those kind of moments were really great. But when you go to moments where it's like, this is a big event for, Tony Stark doing a fundraiser for firefighters or whatever it is. And he's like forcing himself kind of upon her.
And while he's doing it, she's saying, we're at a work event. Yeah. This is not appropriate. I mean, like, literally, she's saying, this is an HR violation.
Yeah. And then to kind of what we were just talking about with Obadiah does the same thing whenever they're in Tony Stark's office, where he's like literally putting his hands on her and he's like, man, does Tony know how much of a lucky man he is?
That's the thing, like, that scene worked in that way, right? To make him be like, that guy's the villain. Yeah. Clearly. I don't know, I don't think that.
But I think
the dance scene was as the tragedy.
We just nowadays.
No, that scene works now to establish Obadiah as like this. There's this other side to him that's like, oh yeah, he's not the good to see you, Tony. Like he's threatening. He's sinister, right? So like I think that scene like works for the story to be like, yeah, this guy like he's a bad guy. He's threatening.
It does absolutely. You're supposed to think he's sexually harassing her.
Yes. But that being said, I don't think that the dance scene, like, knowing everything, like...
The intent was not sexual harassment. Yeah. But the intent is not necessarily what I'm talking about here.
No, but once again, like, I don't think it's the tragedy that we're kind of making it out to be. Like, I don't think it's that egregious, like, of a thing.
I just mean that you couldn't get away with it in a movie now.
Yes.
Hold on. So you're saying that you can't make a movie now about...
that we don't know about.
Sure. That's kind of what I'm thinking as well, but like, no, you could totally make a movie where Tony Stark forces a woman to dance with him. That's not a
And the woman is telling him, we shouldn't be doing this.
To dance! Like, I mean, I understand, like, that in real life, that's inappropriate, but, like, just for a movie, him being like, no, we're gonna dance. That's not that fucking huge for a movie fucking romance. Like,
no,
you look at any 90s rom-com, there's probably something way worse than that.
We're not talking about, like...
I understand, but, like, I think you could do that same scene today, because it's just them dancing. They don't even kiss, they don't really do anything else.
I think if that movie was made today, that scene would not exist.
Yeah.
I agree with DKP.
Sorry, I didn't mean for dead air there. I was trying to get a backwards high five from someone who agrees with me. Well, look, I mean, like, I don't think it's that big a deal, but, like, agree to disagree on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Disagreeing is going to be a part of this.
But here's something I think we can say is in 2008, this conversation wouldn't have happened.
For sure.
Like, I would have had no problem with that. I wouldn't have even noticed it. I didn't have a problem.
I didn't even notice that it was weird until this most recent time I watched it. And I've seen that movie more than 5 times.
Well, I didn't think it was that weird, so...
There you go.
Like, I think it was meant to be equally as inappropriate as the movie meant for it to be. But, like, it's saying like, well, you can't do that today. Like, that's... I don't think they would do that today.
That's what I'm saying.
But I don't think, like... that people would get upset if he did. Because, like I said, it was just, hey, we're dancing. Like, oh, but it might be inappropriate. Nah, fuck it, I'm your boss, we'll dance. Because, you know, that's it. Like, if it went more than that, if it was like, oh, come into my office, come into my hotel room, I'm going to give you a movie part. Like, if it went more than that,
I'm gonna give you a movie part.
Yeah, you know, I could see where it's like, you know, you couldn't do that. But I thought it was relatively...
You know what
Hold on, I have to jack off into this plant.
Female if it's inappropriate.
All right, we can wait for you, Clem.
The female that's here right now is not mic'd, and she is in the background.
That was the one I was getting a backwards high five from for agreement.
Anything else that we want to touch on with the villain?
Yes.
Please.
His motivations were very confusing to me. And, okay, like, I did not watch this, like, in the background when I was doing something else. Like, I pretty much sat down, watched it, like, all the way through, right? Why? Okay, look, I understand. He's like, oh, I'd love to take over the company. But when your company's built basically fully upon this guy's genius intellect for engineering, why the fuck would you have him murdered? And he even kind of says, like, well, I thought I might have been killed in the Golden Goose. And it's like,
but you had one more egg.
You were. Like, what would you, like, you gotta be making great money now. You're like what, like vice president?
No,
the whole public image of this company is built on Tony Stark.
Tony was doing exactly what Obadiah would want him to do prior to he was.
So what? Yeah, where was his motivation to have him killed in the first place?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not sure.
They didn't give us that. Yeah, he did. He wanted to take over the company, but they didn't tell us why.
It's take over the company by rooting it.
Killing him.
That's his problem with Obadiah. 10 out of 10. I'm just
trying to kill Tony after he stopped making weapons makes sense.
To me, that's the problem with Obadiah.
But that part would never have happened.
This movie isn't to establish Obadiah. It's to establish Iron Man.
That's true, but this segment is to criticize the villain. So.
I know, but
not necessarily
I'm
just to criticize
my 10 out of 10.
It's to talk about it.
Well, for a lot of these movies, it'll be to criticize the villain.
Yes, this segment... I would say this segment exists for the purpose of talking about it, because 99% of the time the villains don't work in these movies.
And like, even at the end where it's like, oh, I'm clearly wanted by like the government. And he's like, there's no way I'm giving this company to you. And it's like, what do you think's going to happen once this is over? Like, there's government entities that know, there's proof that you sold weapons to terrorism, like...
Yeah, once he put the suit on, he stopped being a character I could relate to, and he became Snidely Whiplash. He became the guy that just chains Pepper Potts to the railroad tracks to get a run over because he's a bad dude, right? All the things he did stopped making sense because he was not going to keep that company. He was not going to... Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. He'd been busted. They had evidence against him. He was over. So his actions at that point just make no sense. He just becomes a bad guy for the sake of being a bad guy.
Well, I mean, but when you consider the reveal, right, which is like he had Tony Stark attempted, it doesn't make sense from the beginning of the fucking film.
No, I agree. But
yeah,
and I think that reveal was poorly handled as well. Like,
that really bugged me.
It was surprising to me that it was him, but the way that it was done, I don't know.
Like, there might have been an additional scene that got cut where he's like, that might have been another Easter egg where he's like, yeah, I want to take over the company and sell it to Hammer Industries.
Yeah, I'm working with Hammer.
That would make sense.
Yeah, or Hammer wants to.
Yeah.
But nope. That's about all I have on the villain. I really like fucking, let's say Bruce Campbell. Jeff Bridges. I like them both, but, yeah.
So I will say this for Jeff Bridges. This character is not the dude, and this character is not the guy from Tron. He was specifically Obadiah Stane. He did a good job of playing that character. That character just wasn't very interesting to me.
It's kind of sad that Jeff Bridges can no longer be in the MCU. Because you think about the MCU and you think about like
they could have reserved him for a better villain or better. Yeah,
like there is a character out there that Jeff Bridges would be perfect for, and I don't think that's Obadiah Stane. I don't know who it is, but Jeff Bridges, to me, is one of the great actors. So it's kind of a sad thing to
that they used him up.
Peter out in 2008.
I'm gonna dial it back just a little bit to what we talked about earlier, as far as like a scene that a scene that I was impressed with that I liked. Which was just the, because in every movie, the villain has to come clean and be like, here are my true intentions.
Yeah.
In most Marvel movies, I find, that I remember at least, it's them like over a pit of lava on both sides of the explosions, yelling at each other like, the whole world is gonna burn! This one was like him sitting on the couch next to him. While he's like, having his seizure or whatever.
So did that weapon work for you guys?
No,
the
I thought that
paralyzing weapon? It just seemed like a plot device.
It's goofy, but like it worked fine. Like, I didn't hate it.
This technology. You remember this, Tony?
We developed this technology to get around this point in the plot we couldn't figure out how to tell.
Look, like, okay, if you're gonna have a problem with that, then like Batman is just fucked all over the place because there's always like that old Wayne Tech technology that they don't use for whatever.
And
that he can always dig out if he wants.
It's right here on my bat belt,
and like they're kind of like mirrored in a way where it's like
they definitely are.
So like the fact that
that particular weapon,
the movie's
Obadiah Stane is if Lucius Fox
that,
fucking tried to kill Batman, that like he would use that old Wayne Tech shit that he has to catalog and all that, right?
All right, so
I
let's
didn't hate
move on.
it.
We've got 2 more segments left. Next segment's going to be a short one. It's called Our Friend Stanley.
Yeah.
And this is about the Stan Lee cameo.
Who is still alive at the time of this recording.
Still alive.
Somehow.
Man, keep going strong, bro. You're doing great.
We're all about it.
I want to see you in every Marvel Cinematic Universe from here on out. You guys think that he will sign something that allows him to be in other like feature movies?
Oh, I hope so.
We know that these already recorded scenes for movies that like they recorded his scenes first in some of them. Because they don't know if he's
done the Infinity War one.
Oh yeah, they don't know if he's gonna like stay alive. So like they film his scenes as early as possible.
I think they'll still find a way to do it, even if it's just like a painting of him on a wall.
Oh yeah, they'll Easter egg him in somewhere.
So what did you think of this?
Or they'll Grand Moff Tarkin him.
I don't want them to Grand Moff Tarkin.
I don't. Me neither, but I wouldn't put it past him. It's Disney both ways.
Yeah, I like this. I like this scene. I like the whole idea. He's like, good to see you, Hef, or whatever, because he's supposed to be Hugh Hefner, who is no longer with us.
And this is one of the few where he doesn't have a speaking line. Like, who is he talking about? Like, it was just him turning around really briefly, and that was it. They get real brave with him later,
I thought it was really well done, and because it was the first time that they did it, I remember being shocked.
First time they did it in the MCU, because he was in the Spider-Man movies, like the Tobey Maguire ones. I don't know if he ever did X-Men or Fantastic Four, but I know for a fact he did the Spider-Man ones.
But I just mean that
I think he's contractually obligated to be in all Marvel movies.
It blows my mind that he would be contractually obligated to do anything.
Well, I would have said the same thing, except for like Disney now owns
that's true.
Marvel. So like,
but I feel like we're in this
that.
world where we're all contractually obligated to do what Stan Lee wants us to do.
Yeah, that seems like the more likely.
Not once Disney took over, baby. That being said, and I'm only going to say this once in regards to like this topic. I wish that there was an alternate universe where, okay, look, in the Spider-Man movies, right, the Sam Raimi ones, we got a Stan Lee cameo, sure. You know what else we got? A Bruce Campbell cameo in every single one.
Yeah, those were.
I'd rather have that, honestly, but I think Stan Lee's cameos are cool.
Yes.
So I really enjoyed it. It was good. Did you like it, Idify?
Loved it.
Idify. Okay, sorry.
That delay, though. It was real understated in this one. And for a moment, I forgot that he has a cameo in these movies. And I was like, that almost did look like Hugh Hefner. Holy shit. I knew who it was, but I was shocked. Like they're both very old men. And they have about the same body type.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is like that old.
Let's move on to our
sickly-
last segment. The post credits get out your fucking checkbook moment.
Get out your fucking checkbook.
So, this particular segment is designed to specifically discuss the post-credit scenes for at the end of every MCU movie. Of course, as the title implies. So, this... Mountains asked me this while we were watching the movie. Elizabeth, for anybody that doesn't know who Mountains is, was asking me about this particular part. I was like,
That's his
did
wife,
you
for
stay
anyone who doesn't
behind
know
to watch this movie?
either one of those people
To
are.
watch the credits for this movie. And like, no.
Nope.
Like, for starters, I don't remember if I saw this in the theater, but I definitely didn't stay past the credits to watch a scene that, like, that's never... It may have happened in some movies randomly.
I didn't, but I regretted it because the next day, I do remember this experience. The next day, all my friends were talking about it.
The post-credit scene?
And that's the reason I saw this movie twice. It's I went back to see the stupid post-credit scene. Now, that being said, I loved it. I thought it was incredible. And not only that, I was amazed that they were setting up so much for what was to come in this post-credit scene. It paid off. Like that, I did not expect at all.
I know that I watched this because I went and saw this with my older brother who, like, was a way big comic book fan. So, like, not just of X-Men, which is, like, where I learned all that shit, but, like, so when he saw Nick Fury, like, back then, he explained to me his importance, right? So, yeah, like, you know, my first introduction to Nick Fury as a character was Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh,
which,
awesome.
like, does not bum me out at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't bring that up for a second. It's not just the idea that he even mentions the word Avengers Initiative. It's not the idea that it's Nick Fury. It's fucking Samuel L. Jackson.
Well, yeah, it's Nick Fury.
It's a huge, like, one of the biggest actors on the planet in history coming in as this character helping set up this universe. I love the idea that they not only, like, thought to put someone in there, but specifically to have Nick Fury play that. I mean, Samuel L. Jackson play the character. Because as far as I know, you guys correct me if I'm wrong on this. I may not know for sure.
No, Nick Fury is white through.
Nick Fury is white up until this moment.
Anytime someone says he's black in the comics, it's because they
because
they
they
started
in the comics
because of
the
Sam
Ultimate
Jackson. They
Universe,
started writing him
black.
that way.
But that was after 2008
Yeah, that was in response to the positivity
of how people responded
from Sam
to Samuel L.
Jackson.
Jackson.
Yeah, which man, like, and that's a bold move on their part. Like, you could have. There's 100 like really cool old white dudes that could have played that role.
Hell yeah.
But there's only one.
You could have made
Samuel fucking Jackson.
Could have made it Kurt Russell. You
I
could have
think
made it.
you
There's a
guys
million.
Oh man, Kurt Russell would have been great too.
What were
What were
you
you
saying?
saying?
The Ultimate Universe was established before this movie. So Samuel L. Jackson was already in mind. Yes, it was.
That's not what I heard on Comics
Yeah.
Explained.
What's the name of the
It's Ultimate Universe.
What happened?
Ultimate Universe Marvel?
We're just looking it up right now.
They had modeled the character after Jackson. They just got lucky they got Jackson for the movie.
Oh, so you're saying Jackson was based off of this character in Ultimate Universe? So
Correct.
it says publication 2000. So maybe so.
Well, either way, like, that character's
I
been
know
around
my
for a
facts.
long fucking time.
And so
And it was a bold move for them to go with, like, that one, which is the newer one, like, and by far the least popular, because Marvel was, like, really sinking in ticket sales, comic sales, fucking big time, you know, through 2000,
So here's the. Oh, I'm sorry.
But I was gonna say, like, you know, way before then. So they're gonna go with, like, the least popular variant of him. Bold move, and it fucking worked out so good. Well, I've said quite a few times, if you recast every character as Samuel Jackson, I would go see that movie and be thrilled to do so.
like being John Malkovich, but with Samuel L. Jackson.
It's like, we've talked about this numerous times, where it's just like there's certain actors like John Cusack or R.I.P. Kevin Spacey, where it's like, I just enjoy the way that they talk, like their mannerisms as a person, which always translates somewhat into their acting. Where it's like, any movie they're in, I'll watch it. Sam Jackson is definitely one of those.
So here's one thing I will say is that, so I didn't know much about Nick Fury, but what I knew about Nick Fury is he shows up just like he does in these movies in the comics. So there may or may not be Nick Fury comics, but that's never how I ran into him. He always showed up at the end of something, and then Nick Fury was like the guy just like this who sort of puts people together or solves problems. So when they put him in this post-credit scene, it really worked for me as a representation of Nick Fury. I was like, this is how Nick Fury always showed up in the comics. He was just sort of like in the background.
Nick Fury in the comics was always, if he's in there, you know he's up to something. He's always been kind of like the puppet master for overarching issues. So if you finally get to a story, don't see him, and then you see him in the last one, you know he has a big fucking involvement in it.
Exactly, but it's not what the comic will be about. He's always like the guy who shows up and says, "Oh, here's the bigger picture."
No,
agreed.
There's a lot of arcs where like he has a super prominent role.
Oh, I'm sure there are, but his general usage would be like he shows up in Spider-Man and he says, "Hey, Spider-Man."
Yeah, he's not like
he shows up in. You see what I'm saying? He's
no,
not like
I do. Yeah, and that's I think he kind of has that mysterious air about him. You know? He's like a G-man kind of almost.
And Samuel L. Jackson and the way that they used him in this perfectly encompassed that. It was like, who is this guy? What's going to happen? But you get sort of an idea of it.
Yeah. Anything else that we want to talk about with the post-credit scene?
Nope.
Nah, I mean, I think I'm good on that one, man.
Well, guys, I think that's going to do it for our first episode. So, yeah, thank you guys for hanging out. I want to take a moment to plug a couple of things. So, this is a Chainsaw Ape production. Chainsaw Ape is
YouTube,
a video game, YouTube, Twitch, streaming, podcast group of people. It's primarily myself and DKP, but Paul joins us for our Netflix
You would have to say
club.
Probably Major Tommy Rogers and Danny Kilpatrick, as you said.
Yeah.
Remember?
So Paul joins us for our Netflix movie club, which you can join that Netflix movie club at facebook.com/groups/CSA Netflix Club. You can join us and we watch Netflix movies every week and talk about those in a stream. And yeah, you can follow us on Twitter at Chainsaw Ape. You can subscribe to us on YouTube, all the places. So, gentlemen, I really appreciate you guys joining me. Any closing thoughts before I get us out of here?
Thanks for doing this. This is a really cool idea. I'm looking forward to seeing all these movies, and I feel like I'm going to be set for, Infinity War.
Definitely.
Yeah, if I have any parting thoughts, it would be Google Terrence Howard's micropenis.
Oh my God.
You will not regret it.
I regret it.
I'm sure we'll never talk about that again on future episodes either. I feel like that's going to be something that stays in this one entirely.
I do want to take a moment to give anybody who joined us
about it constantly.
Definitely. I want to give everybody who joined us watching it live on Twitch a shout out, especially Morning Shark. Morning Shark did tons of live fact checking for us. So awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time. And if you are listening to this or watching this on YouTube or hopefully maybe we can get it on a podcast service, make sure you watch it live. We're doing it every Saturday night. So, well, hopefully every Saturday night, if schedule permits for all of us.
We're going to have to figure that out.
So, yeah. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. I am Thomas Rogers. And remember, Baskin Robbins always finds out.
Remember, Terrence Howard's micropenis.
I'm Paul Burns, by the way.
Danny Kilpatrick, sure.
Bye!
Oh, wait.
Terrence Howard.
And Alexander.
No, that's Terrence Howard on the other end of the phone.
So,
not Terrence Howard.
For Alexander Hernandez, Paul Burns, Danny Kilpatrick, and myself, this has been Preparation Avengers, and we'll see you next time.